Thank you for spending another midweek moment with the Wisconsin property taxpayers. I'm Paul Rozeski. Today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. Thanks for being here. Look into the week ahead. It's very appropriate that Friday is National Attitude Day, so it's a day to remember that each of us control the energy we put in the world. Whether it's how we're talking or how we're driving, it's absorbed by others, so however you celebrate, please celebrate responsibly. This week we check in again on the slow motion car crash that has been the surplus tax rebate bill. We look at what government is consistently good at doing here in Wisconsin and a quick update on some potential future drama. Lots to get to, so let's jump into some news together. And we start with the failed budget surplus bill, and politicians are still taking shots at one another about it. And if you're keeping score, Governor Evers has taken 3 times as many shots at Senate Democrats than at the Republicans. He really is genuinely mad, and he really is genuinely your sweet old grandpa, because he is blasting them using words like untenable. Evers genuinely thought this was the right thing to do, and it was a long compromise, and he's calling it out for what it is. When asked about the Senate Democrats, he said that Dianne Hasselbein is in charge, and no one wants to break ranks because she controls who gets in on the Joint Finance Committee, who gets in to have positions of power, and to quote Governor Evers, she has people wrapped around her finger. It's pretty extraordinary because we're going on multiple weeks of him blasting his party, but they did blow up a deal that achieves multiple priorities they've been fighting for since last January, and a couple priorities of things that they wanted to keep in place. He's too nice to say it, but both sides of the aisle betrayed their own party and betrayed the taxpayer. When Senator Hasselbein was asked whether the Senate could come back to take another vote, she said that she talked to Devin LeMahieu, the Senate Republican Majority Leader, and that he said there's no chance. She's implying it's his decision and it's his fault that this isn't happening. It is very blatant spin in spite of our state government. Remember, positive attitude. In other news, let's take an additional tour of polling numbers. We've already talked about how voters, whether they're Republican, Independent, or Democrat, were all about 80% in support of the surplus package getting passed. An example of how public sentiment is one way and the actions of our state government are in the opposite direction. Here's another example. A nationwide poll found that 74% of people oppose online wagering while 30% approve. A trend, not overwhelming, but interestingly, there was a hotly debated bill that opened the door for online gambling in Wisconsin. It passed the legislature and got signed into law by Governor Evers. Another example that public sentiment believes one thing and is at odds with the actions of our state government. Another survey, little bit more distinct results. They found that 56% of voters oppose using taxpayer funds to fund public college athletic departments, with just 19% supporting. That's about a 30% swing right there. The growing trend of not loving the NIL system. Interestingly enough, there was an 11th hour bill that was passed by the legislature and signed into law by Governor Evers that gives $14.6 million of additional state funds every year to the UW athletic department. The way the bill is written, that money has to go to paying their debt. But let's be real. It's $14 million to go towards paying their debt to free up $14 million to free up money somewhere else. Public sentiment believes one thing and is at odds with the actions of our state government again. Here's an obvious one. This may sound like a repeat, but it's not. 85% of voters in a nationwide survey say taxes are either much too high or somewhat too high. That's maybe why everybody is so in support of the tax rebate bill, because Wisconsin is 12th highest in corporate income taxes out of 50 states, 8th in property taxes, and 9th in personal income taxes. So, the most drastic example of our frustration. You want to know why Tony Evers is so furious? He's firing off untenable and questioning people's character, maybe because the taxes frustration is so painfully obvious that we are all beside ourselves wondering how politicians could get this so wrong. Public sentiment believes one thing and is at odds with the actions of our state government again. In other news, the universities of Wisconsin, the regents, are proposing a potential 2% tuition increase for in-state graduates. Now, on paper, 2% does not sound like the end of the world. At UW-Madison, it is about another $210 per year for in-state students. At UW-Milwaukee, you're talking about $184. Other campuses, about $147 to $175. Yes, it's not a big deal, but it's also on top of a 5% tuition increase last year, a $257 million increase in the money they're getting in the state budget, above and beyond the millions they're already getting, and on top of the $15 million for the athletics department that isn't for NIL. Now, a few lawmakers have come out and have been vocally critical about this because the extra money and the approval last year for them, they thought it should have been enough, supposedly because UW leadership in a committee meeting last year said that they weren't expecting to be raising tuition again this soon. However, a 2% increase, it comes after 10 years of a tuition freeze starting in 2013 through COVID and what we had for inflation after that, finally to be lifted in 2023. Are they needing to play catch up? That's a debatable question, but it's a reasonable question. Is it better to ask for multiple small increases instead of a bigger one every few years? Not an earth-shattering topic, but will certainly pop up in the near future because it will be a debate that will rage on for now. And finally, I give you a quote that is a shout out to the farmers that I know that are loyal listeners to the podcast. This quote is from Colton Buckley, director of the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service. When an acre of topsoil in this nation is turned into asphalt or concrete, part of the soul of rural America dies. Have a great second half of your weekend. As always, thanks for listening. Wisconsin Property Taxpayers Inc. is a nonpartisan membership organization consisting of thousands of small business, farm, and homeowner members in every Brewers winning streak loving corner of the state. Founded in 1985, the organization is committed to providing its members with up-to-date information, legislative advocacy, and exclusive cost-saving benefits. Find out how to join at wptonline.org/join.